Okay, I kind of want to give up on this and move on after what happened in the last video, character of illusionism. But they're just about to get to the combination problem. This is something I really wanted to hear him talk about. So let's do this last little bit. This will be the last section of this Strawson one, and then we'll go on to something more familiar with stability.
Okay, so I take it that the main objection people raise to the view, once they kind of get over the the emotional response or whatever, that it's weird, is that it's not clear how you get a single unified subjective experience if that subjective experience is composed of countless little conscious bits, right? So to flesh that out a little bit further, on the panpsychist view, we're going to say, so my brain, which is where consciousness is located for me, right? I panpsychists agree with that. My brain's going to be made up of what, like 100 billion neurons or something, and each of those neurons is composed of little conscious bits, and all those little conscious bits, on your view, have a what it's likeness. They have some kind of experience, very basic experience, but then they all somehow together produce me, and I experience myself as a single subjective experience, right? Like I am in pain, I'm excited about something and so forth. So yeah, how could that possibly be the case that there's just one of me if I'm made up of all these little bits? So what do you say to that? And did I do that justice? Yeah.
You
I mean,
did.
the objection was put famously by William James in
Mhm.
his 1890 book, The Principles of Psychology. And yet, even in that book, he basically thinks that panpsychism must be right. But yeah, the idea is you can't sum subjects, individual little blips of blobs of consciousness can't, as it were, fuse into a single large
Yeah.
conscious subject of the sort that you are. There's a lovely passage again in William James's late book, A Pluralistic Universe, where he says, I've struggled with this. I've covered hundreds of sheets of paper with notes, and he just said, I think it must happen, but I don't know how. But he actually refers there before. I think there was a general field theory. He brings in the notion of field. So the first thing I would say is that the picture of all the little bits isn't really right. You do have to operate with a field theoretic conception of the nature of the physical, as in, for example, relativistic quantum field theory. So I know where this might lead you next, but
Right.
so that particular problem, I think, goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you get, as it were, small fields within the overall, I'm talking completely impressionistically, and that they somehow constitute the kinds of conscious states that you and I experience.
Yeah, but that doesn't help the problem. It doesn't go away because the same thing happens to the table, but there's no conscious subject there. So what is it about these fields interacting in that way as opposed to the table way that gives consciousness? You haven't answered that.
So what you do there is you abandon the smallest position, the bit where lots of little bits position of the nature of the physical world. And I mean, that, I would say, has just gone in physics. So that's all to the good. It's not yet a positive account of how it might work, but it is, and it removes the objection, the standard combination problem objection.
Okay.
It doesn't. What, dude? Okay, no. Man, Strawson, bro. How did I ever survive classes with this guy? I don't. Rhetoric. No, it doesn't remove the combination problem in any way, shape, or form. Yes, if there are tiny little bits of consciousness, if you have a billiard ball of consciousness and you wonder how 2 billiard balls of consciousness produce me, okay, great. If you have fields, you still have the question of how is it that these fundamental things, which the excitation of a field that we associate with an electron is different than the excitation of a field that we associate with an up quark or down quark. These things interact, tables and chairs and brains result. What's the difference between a table and a chair and a brain? That makes it the case that the fields combine to a conscious subject in one, but not in the other. There's no solution to the combination problem. The combination problem is, how do these physical things that physics talks about, that you say have consciousness underneath them, result in a consciousness like ours? Okay, so if they're not little bits, there's still some combining. It doesn't, it's, oh God, this is not
But
good.
then I wasn't going to go here, but it seems that now I have to. I mean, now maybe there's a worry from the other direction, right? How do we get individuated subjects of consciousness on this field picture where it seems like the natural view might be, well, there's just like this single mind. The universe is one big mind, but you and I, experience ourselves as individuated subjects.
Oh, I see. He was going for cosmopsychism as an answer to the combination problem. Then you get the decombination problem, which is what this guy's bringing up. How is it that you decombine the cosmic mind into our individual minds? And that's where people like, Castrop has his depersonalization or whatever. But the decombination problem, yeah. So,
Within that broader field. So how does that work?
Yeah. Well, again, not saying any of it is easy, but
so it's hard. Like a hard problem. It's a hard problem. Interesting.
However much it's true that there's in some sense just one single thing, the universe. And I think that this is called what I call thing monism. It's not stuff monism or substance monism that says there's only one fundamental kind of stuff. It's thing monism. It says ultimately only one thing. And I think that's probably the right thing to say about the universe. But
so so like a Parmenidean view, ultimate monism, one thing. Yeah, so this isn't panpsychism. See what, dude? Okay.
Obviously, there's in some sense in which there are lots of things, you and me, and the tables and chairs again. So I would, how can I put this? I think I would partly appeal to evolution. So we've got so things have evolved that move around and have to survive in an environment. And interesting consciousness has been wholly driven by that. So I would.
Yeah, but how? And how are these separate things if there's only one thing in it? You're not addressing the question. Like, be serious for a moment. Tell us. Yeah, okay.
I would quote something called Orgel's second rule. I don't know if you know what that is. What it says is, evolution is cleverer than you are.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, there shouldn't be any more problem about how there can be these seemingly isolated consciousnesses like yours and mine than there is about how there can be seemingly isolated things like tables and chairs and human beings. So something along those lines.
Yes, there is a seemingly more problem. Tables and chairs are not conscious, but we are. And you haven't explained the difference except to say evolution is smarter than us. But the physicalist says that. Yeah, I don't see much interesting here. I thought he was going to talk about his views about itself and stuff. But
okay. Again, that it's not as if I know exactly what to say. And in fact, I don't hold out any hope for, as it was, an interesting science flowing from this position. I don't think there's much can be done. I just think that there are extremely powerful general metaphysical philosophical reasons for thinking that panpsychism is, as economists say, the least worst metaphysical view.
But this isn't even panpsychism. If there's only one thing, and that thing is consciousness, then it's only panpsychism in some weird sense that it says that matter is associated with consciousness, but it's not the traditional pan. So this is why the idealists, I think, get a little bit upset, because it does sound like what he's saying is idealism. This is idealism. This isn't panpsychism. So why do they not use the term idealism? What is this about? Why?
Right. Also, Winston Churchill said something similar about democracy, right? So it's the
least worst. He didn't use least worst, which is kind of appalling, really. It's like they also say first best.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. So I think that's it. I think we kind of covered all of the bases there, as it were.
In the philosophy of mind.
In the philosophy of mind. Do you have any other things we didn't get to on panpsychism or anything? All right.
No, I just think it's very important to stress a point that it really was a commonplace 100 years ago, that we know nothing, that physics tells us nothing about the intrinsic nature of the physical. So which just got lost in analytic philosophy after about 1960. So from then on, everybody seems to think they can know for sure that the physical is in no way consciousness in its basic nature. And so we went backwards.
It's that everyone seems to think that we can explain that stuff without positing consciousness. And then when it comes to our consciousness, you say, no, we got to go back and pause it at the beginning. But we don't need it to explain any of the stuff that the water is doing, stars are doing. We don't ever have to appeal to consciousness in any of those explanations. That's why. So the intrinsic nature, even if there is an intrinsic nature, whether that even makes sense at all, is something that a lot of people think, not a lot, well, some people think science itself is challenging. So yeah, it's challenging the common sense to think there could be no intrinsic nature to mass. Mass is just a relation to force and acceleration, and without anything being related, that's challenging to common sense. And people like this don't like that view. But to point out that it was commonplace 100 years ago to think something, and now our ideas have changed because of 100 years of thinking about it. It's not that we forgot about it, it's that we think maybe you could do without it. So your claim is that we can't. Okay, great. But, what is all this psychological analysis of us and what, not clear.
Seriously backwards. And we haven't yet fully recovered in analytic philosophy, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think things are, how do you see the future? Do you think things are getting better in this front or what?
I have no idea. I mean,
as long as there's rhetoric like this, things will not get better. As long as people go around saying stuff like this guy's been saying, and this, talking about illusionists and crucifixion, Ukraine, as long as that's like the level of rhetoric around this stuff, we're not going to make progress. We're going to have fist fights. That's not progress. So people need to calm down, think rationally. This level of rhetoric doesn't help. That's fine, but this is not how you make progress. So if you want the future of philosophy to look like this, where it's people accusing the other person of like not caring about Ukraine or some shit, dude, what? No, huh? So look, I'm not denying that views about consciousness might have moral implications, of course, sure. That's like 4 steps down the road, though. That's not like, oh, illusionism, therefore, like, go look at someone who's being crucified. I know I should have like waited a little bit longer to record this, but we're almost done. Okay, let's just.
We live in a world with sort of daily proofs of monstrous irrationality and people being able to believe anything as long as other people in their gang believe it in the way that Kahneman describes. And I mean, I find that profoundly sad and depressing, but so who knows? I mean, I hope that we'll make some progress in getting back to the commonplace of 100 years ago, that, as it were, nothing in science or physics gives us any gives us any reason to think that consciousness isn't one of the fundamental properties.
It seems to me, as somebody who granted wasn't around at the time, that maybe the conversation has opened up a little bit in the last 10, 20 years or something on this front.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, because I feel like, like panpsychism it's not part of the conversation again, at least.
Oh, it's very much so.
Right.
Yeah. And funnily enough, I suppose about 15 years ago, when I had one of my students, Philip Goff, was applying for jobs, and he would write to me saying, should I say on my application that I'm sympathetic to panpsychism? He thought, I mean, the view was, you better not say that because you will not be taken seriously. And I think we moved on from there.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Yeah, and he's subsequently written a popular book about these things. So
right.
I might lean to that. Okay, you want to transition to talk about a couple of other things before I let you go here?
That's enough of this. Let's go ahead and. I mean, I thought he was going to talk about his views about the self and how because on his view, he has entertained the idea that each conscious experience is a thing and a self. Like, so even in our case, it's kind of like his most radical idea, but they didn't talk about that at all. Anyway, okay, so that was a wild ride. That was a wild and unnecessarily emotional ride through some wild fields. Look, I get that people are passionate about this stuff, and I am also passionate about this stuff, and I have strong feelings as well. And I find illusionism hard to take seriously in the more extreme versions, which is why I don't think that these people I know who are nice hold those extreme versions. Francois, Keith, I don't know Dan very well, but he doesn't seem like an asshole. He seems like a nice guy too. These guys, they're just trying to figure things out like the rest of us, the illusionists, I mean. They're just trying to think about consciousness. They have a view that people have the wrong idea about consciousness. To say such horrible things like that they're believing that it's sad and depressing. They think that Ukraine and no one is suffering, and they shall be subject to watching crucifixions and telling the people there that they're not suffering. This is on another level of like uncharitable. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to some more civilized philosophy of science discussion. I think that's what I'm gonna be going back to here. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, honestly, like this is an area where people's passions are inflamed. Consciousness is like close to our feeling of who we are. I understand that, and Galen has strong views that it's real. So do I, which is why I find it challenging to think about his view and illusion. I think they're both challenging views. Um, wow. Okay. I just could do without all of that emotionally charged rhetoric. I just could do without it. It doesn't help us think about these issues. It's really disappointing. I mean, this is not only a famous philosopher, Galen Strawson, but he's the son of a famous philosopher. It's like a philosophical legacy. Yeah, P.F. Strawson was, a philosophical hero of mine. Lots of people, but it's like to see this level of dumbassery, dude. I need to be above this. This is, maybe it's not dumbassery. It's just his honest reaction to, how could you still have this after talking to these people? How could you still have those views? Like, he's met Dan, he's met Keith, he's met Francois, maybe even Garfield. I don't know. He's met these people. How could you still think that? Dude, I'm still haven't recovered. Yeah. Okay. I need to stop. I'm out.